Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Around this time last year, I was wrapping up my top 5 favorite series with a special list of my top 10 favorite watercolor brands. And I thought it was about time to revisit it with another year of experience under my belt. As many of you know, I do not like directly answering the question, what brand of watercolors should I start with? Not because I don't want to help you or tell you or spend time replying, it's because this is actually a very loaded question, the answer of which should be based on numerous things, including your personal preferences, subjects, workspace, and even your geographical location. While you're unlikely to buy bad watercolors when it comes to any well-known professional brand of paint, not all brands are or handle the same. I can't tell you what the best brand of watercolor is because the answer is going to be different for everyone. What I can do is show you a video about my personal favorite brands and explain to you why they're on my list, what strengths and weaknesses they have, and who might gravitate towards them so that you can take this information and better decide what brand you should go with. If you'd like to see full reviews or swatch with me videos from these brands, please go ahead and check the description below. And if you'd like to make any paint purchases based on the recommendations in this video, I am super grateful for those of you who use my affiliate links that are also in the description below, which can help out the channel without costing you anything more. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Numbers 9 and 10 on my list were especially difficult for me to place. The question came down to, what do I rank higher? A brand that I rarely use but is objectively a higher quality paint, or one that I tend to use more often because I happen to have a palette of it, despite me recognizing that the quality is a tad below the others on this list. In my heart of hearts, this is a video about my favorite watercolors, so I decided to put Holbein at number 10. Y'all didn't appreciate me leaving it off my list last year, but truth be told, this is the only brand of paint in this video that I don't have a dedicated palette for in my collection. The lovely Autocano sent me a large collection of dot samples last year so I could try out one of her favorite brands, which I'm extremely grateful and appreciative of. However, the 4 palettes that the dot cards came in are pretty cumbersome to lay out on my small workspace to actually use in painting, so I've only created a couple with them over the past year. The reason I hadn't invested in this brand, as many of you may recall me saying here on the channel numerous times before, is that they're an extremely expensive brand here in the US. Now they are available over on Jackson's at affordable prices, but given that I already have an absurd amount of paint, it doesn't make sense for me personally to go out and spend the money on them now to make a new palette. Based on my limited experiences with them, I can recommend these paints to artists who can find them affordably in their area, that tend to like vibrant but less granulating paints, and who don't mind having a lot of multi-pigment tube colors in their collection. Holbein has a lot of these multicolored tubes in their line, and those colors aren't inherently bad, but especially when pulling from multiple color families for a single tube color, these paints can be less reliable in mixes, yielding some unexpected results. So as long as you're aware of that, maybe tend to use colors more directly from the tube, I think this is a safe brand to go with. In this demo, I did find them relatively easy to handle with both moderate dispersion and liftability. Last year, White Nights was on my list in the student and affordable category. Their position in the watercolor hierarchy is still hotly debated, but I do consider this to be a lower-end brand of professional yet budget-friendly paint, and thus I'm going to head and place it in my number 9 spot. As I mentioned before, these are admittedly not quite as top-notch as some of the other brands on this list, but for those of you looking for a truly affordable, entry-level professional brand of watercolors, this is my top recommendation. I find them easy to use, bold without being unnaturally vibrant, and I especially love the soft granulation of colors like cerulean. They have a lovely new quinacridone gold hue color called Indian Gold and a new sap green that glows and has my stamp of approval. The line does contain some odd, opaque, and fugitive pigments throughout, and for that reason, I don't really recommend getting one of their pre-made sets of these, which is, of course, the most affordable way to get them, but you can still purchase colors for only $2 to $3 per full pan by picking out your own. I carefully curated a set of 14 colors and subjected them all to a 6-month light fastness test, and I had absolutely zero complaints. If you stick to well-known and trusted pigments like PY50, PV19, PV60, and PBR7, you'll be good to go. They did also just start selling this brand in tubes, but I can't comment on those because I haven't tried them yet. I believe this next brand is the biggest drop in my lineup, falling 3 places from number 5 to number 8. I still believe that Mission Gold is a lovely brand of paint, but this is a perfect example of how an artist's preferences may differ or even change within their own journey. Mission Gold is a very vibrant, straightforward brand of paint. I've said before that I think it's a wonderful brand for new watercolorists, and I stand by that. When I started my watercolor adventures, I wanted bright paints that did not granulate or move too much in water. And I've heard these same sentiments repeated time and time again from other new watercolorists as well. Both granulation and flow are qualities unique to watercolor, and for those especially coming to watercolor from other mediums, those are things that we might try to avoid at first. Mission Gold does not use Oxgall or any other flowing agents, which means there's very little dispersion of water. So when you put the paint down in a wet wash, it's not going to go too far. While some artists love flow with wild abandon and may hate this quality about Mission Gold paints, it can give other artists, primarily new artists, much more control over their medium, making it easier to transition into this new medium. I've also heard that this company has gone through some formulation changes over the past year or so to ensure quality and light fastness throughout their range, so it does seem like they are listening and responsive to their community. Open stock, these paints once again can be quite expensive in the US, just like Holbein, but they have a wide range of pre-made sets that are more affordable and are also newly available on Jackson's as well. Next up at number 7 is another brand that didn't even make the cut last year. That is right, my friends, I have officially let Winsor Newton into my heart and onto my palette. My longtime viewers know my history with this brand and that I haven't been a big fan of it in the past. I think that they are generally overhyped, overpriced, and I really cannot stand their whole marketing standpoint about telling their customers not to refill their pans with their very own tube paint. I think it's ridiculous. But I know how many of you love working with them, and they've obviously been around for quite a while, so they must be doing something right. My biggest gripe with them in the past is that their pans have been really difficult to re-wet. From their Cotmans to the professional lines, I just don't enjoy that experience at all. However, since last year, my viewers have actually helped me to form my own palette of professional tube paint that's poured into half pans, which I really enjoy working with, even though they tell you not to do that. Oddly enough, I first fell in love with their extremely opaque, limited edition earth tone colors. I rarely reach for this palette over my other palettes when I need something like a standard regular watercolor set, but those really unique limited edition colors keep me coming back time and time again. While some of these colors are no longer available and therefore kind of a moot point to this whole list, they have added some of their limited edition colors to their permanent lineup as far as I can tell from what I've been seeing online. If you're interested in trying this brand, I recommend them for artists who don't have to pay an arm and a leg to get them, and specifically for their really unique pigment offerings. I don't buy into their whole pan versus tube situation because I enjoy working from their dried tube paint better than their pans, but do stay away from their tube version of Winsor Green Blue shade, which does develop a really ugly white film when it's re-wet time and time again. However, that's the only color I've had an issue with. Steady at number 6 once again is Sennelier. As I mentioned last year, I really enjoy using these paints when I reach for them, which sadly isn't super often. However, in large part, I think that's because until recently, I had a really limited selection of colors that I didn't choose myself since they came in a prearranged palette. Since that last video, I've expanded my color selection, so I hope to reach for them more often moving forward. I do struggle with their selection of earth tones, which as an animal portrait painter is a really big downfall for me. However, their spectral colors are beautifully saturated and they're renowned for their glazing properties. Overall, I find them a pleasure to work with when I do get them out. Like Winsor Newton, they come in both pans and tubes, but they don't seem to tell you not to refill your pans with tube paint if you want to. However, you should know that their pans and tubes are quite different because Sennelier is a honey-based watercolor. The poured pans of tube paint are never going to perfectly set up because the honey inside of them is a humectant, meaning it constantly pulls moisture from the air, staying sticky to the touch. The pre-made pans are easier to travel with, and unlike Winsor & Newton, I do not find these difficult to re-wet and to use. Sennelier is a favorite among many floral painters, and I find them to be delicately beautiful, shining most when you take the time to layer and create depth with them. Moving up a couple places to number 5 is Quor. Made by Golden, who are renowned in the wider scope of the paint industry, Quor watercolors are unique in that they don't use a traditional gum Arabic binder. Instead, they use Aquazol along with their proprietary synthetic oxgall. These paints have a unique flow that leaps and bounds across the page. Remember how I was talking about Mission Gold's ability to stay put? Well, Quors are the extreme opposites of that, and thus are not watercolors that I would recommend to beginners unless perhaps you solely work in abstracts that you want to be very loose and flowy. Quor watercolors are quite expensive, and they do come in smaller 11 milliliter tubes opposed to the standard 15 milliliter tubes of other brands. However, they hands down are the most vibrant colors I have ever experienced. It may be hard getting used to having to soften them down with so much water, but if you do so properly and don't waste a lot of paint in the process, I think you get just as much mileage out of a single tube as you would compared to other brands. Their paints are also, due to the high pigment load, incredibly staining, so I would stay away from them if you like to use a lot of lifting techniques in your work. I would recommend these paints for those experienced watercolors who really love color, but I would caution you against their earth tones, which I feel are oddly chalky and textural in a not so awesome granular kind of way. Stick to their gorgeous, bright spectral colors and you will have a for sure winner. Coming in at number 4 is Schmincke. What? Schmincke? 4? Blasphemy! How? Why? Well, when it comes to my top 2, 3, and 4 picks, it's really hard for me to put them in any kind of order as I love them all dearly and for very different reasons. But ultimately, I had to pick some kind of order, so here we go. Schmincke Horadam watercolors are beautiful, soft, delicate, and easy to re-wet. Unwrapping their hand-poured little half pans is like uncovering delightful candies worth their weight in gold. Pouring their tubes into pans is hands down the most satisfying paint pour you'll ever experience across an entire brand. Colors that are hard to activate in other brands like Potter's Pink, Viridian, or Earth Green are a walk in the park with Schmincke. So why on earth are they at number 4? Well, over the years, I've started gravitating towards the more vibrant and granulating colors. Schmincke is a dream to paint with for soft velvety washes, but it's not the first thing I reach for when I want a pow of color or a sea of texture. Also, while I love my Schmincke palette, this is the closest I come into my collection to that kind of precious conundrum. They're so high up on a pedestal for me, both from a price standpoint and some kind of ephemeral quality that I can't quite put my finger on, that I don't use them as often as I should because I don't want to waste them, which is silly and something I definitely should not do and should not keep you all from painting either. I recommend them to artists who love smooth, delicate colors when granulation is not a top concern, and especially for those of you who are looking for the smoothest ultramarine in all the land, as well as non-traditional transparent earth tones. So, with the major European brands already accounted for, we're going to be spending the rest of our list hanging out on the west coast of the United States, starting with M. Graham. Like Quor, M. Graham is an incredibly bright, pigmented line of watercolors. It's intoxicating and enticing to look at their swatches all lined up pretty in a row, and it's very easy to fall in love with the vibrancy and depth of color. Though if you're not used to their strength, they might end up bullying you around a little bit. And due to the high pigment load, it can be really difficult to lift these colors if you need to, or if that is something that you like to use in your practice. I know I already told you that my top 2, 3, and 4 were really hard, but that is especially true for my number 2 and 3 spots. M. Graham hosts some of my favorite ride or die colors, including Anthraquinone Blue, Terra Rosa, and Cobalt Teal, which can all be seen in this painting, as well as other notable colors from their line like Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Maroon Paraline, Azo Green, and their beautifully simple 2-pigment neutral tint. But however wonderful as some of these colors are, I do find myself missing a range of pinks from Mgram, and their honey-based formula does make it a little bit more worrisome to travel with, or even to swap out pans or wells without getting paint all over everything. They are super easy to re-wet, perhaps a little bit too much so in humid climates, but all in all, Mgram is a wonderful pick for watercolorists who love intensely rich watercolors with a traditional binder. I'd also recommend them for someone who has an immobile or stationary studio palette in which you don't need to change around your colors often, and who also like the idea of working from a tube paint type of consistency versus the pan. Taking Mgram's old spot at number 2 just ever so slightly is Da Vinci. Da Vinci Paint Co. is, as you've heard me talk about them before on the channel time and time again, a trustworthy, family-owned and operated, artist-supporting paint company based out of Southern California. Their small batch watercolors are incredibly pigmented, reliable, and dependable, and in their lineup you will find many must-have staples as well as some very unique colors like one of the last remaining manganese blue mixtures, and even a Theo indigo violet mixture too. They support artists as well by working with them to curate specialty sets like the trio project I participated in last summer, as well as artist-designed palettes. On top of all of that, they are also extremely affordable if you live in the US. In addition to their standard 15 milliliter tubes already being affordable, they also sell economy tubes at 37 milliliters, starting at freaking $11 for earth tones, which is just insane. That's cheaper than some other 15 milliliter tubes of paint. They also just launched their long-awaited 8 milliliter tubes ranging from $5 to $9, so artists can try out the colors without too much risk, which I know you've all been asking for a long time. In my opinion, there's not much to not love about this brand, unless it is you live outside of the US, in which case I know shipping is really expensive for you guys, but hopefully if we make enough ruckus, we can get some international companies interested in stocking this underappreciated brand as well. Well, folks, no surprises here. Daniel Smith has been and continues to be an absolute staple of my watercolor toolkit. But before I gush over them, just so you know that I'm not a total hypocrite for throwing shade at other brand shortcomings while giving DS a free pass, let's go ahead and start with some of their negatives, shall we? Daniel Smith is the watercolor giant in North America. They pour a lot of money into marketing and have an excessive 250 plus watercolors in their range, including a wide assortment of iridescent paints, which I never go anywhere near, and a line of gemstone colors called Primatex, which are kind of hit and miss in terms of their value. And some of their colors, like Viridian and Lapis Lazuli, dry hard as rocks and are a complete waste of your time, money, and resources. Furthermore, in this past year, they, in my opinion, made a massive faux pas coming out with really overpriced hand-poured half-pan sets in one of the worst commercial plastic boxes I have ever seen, which is completely unsuitable for use as a mixing palette, despite one of the sets being the incredible Jane Blundell's famous Ultimate Mixing Set. I don't get it. I don't understand. Whew. So, have I been harsh enough? Because all of that being said, being the wildlife portrait artist that I am, still, no one can hold a candle to Daniel Smith earth tones, and I will forever be in love with them for that reason. In addition to their unmatched range of earth colors, their spectral range is also gorgeous, meaning that just about any watercolor artist, regardless of your subject, can build a beautiful palette using their paints. I would just recommend you do it by buying their tubes and pouring your own pans instead of paying someone else to do it. It's easy to say that I'm only such a fangirl because this was the first brand of professional paint that I started with, and that may in part be true. However, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I have gone through a lot of change throughout my time as a watercolorist. I started off loving and yearning for the deep and vibrant flat washes of Phthalos and quinacridones, but eventually gave way to the granulation that is so completely unique to this medium, which Daniel Smith excels at. Daniel Smith has been there for me every step of the way, able to cover the gamut of my desires at any given time. Signed, yours truly, Denise. Just kidding, though I know that got a little love lettery sounding there, but in short, if you prefer to stay with a single brand of paint, no one has you covered like these guys do. Thank you guys for sticking with me throughout this video. I hope that you have found it useful or insightful in some way. And just remember, there's no such thing as a best watercolors brand list, only what each of us finds in our own hearts to be true based on how and what we like to paint. If this video has helped you pick out a brand of paint that you enjoy working with, but you still want help building your own palette from scratch, go ahead and check out my Skillshare class called How to Set Up a Custom Watercolor Palette, where I go more in depth of how and why I choose the colors that I do, and how you can modify those own choices for your own needs. I'll put a link for a free trial to that Skillshare class in the description below if you want to check that out. And if you've been curious about these little swatches of paint that I've been putting up next to the demo painting throughout this video, well, you're in luck. And as a thank you for sticking with me till the end of the video, I will let you guys know that I will be starting a new series on this channel starting next week, I think. It's going to be called Brand by Brand, unless anyone else can give me a better name to go with. And in that series, I'll be taking a look at the individual brands that I mentioned here in this top 10 video in order to create mini starting palettes. They'll loosely be based off of my basic palette recipe from my Skillshare class, but still leaving room for some unique colors that each brand has to offer and contribute to your collection. Let me know which brand you are excited to take a closer look at in that series, and I look forward to sharing it with you. This video required quite a bit of extra work that I normally put into my videos, so if you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you can give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, leave me a comment down below and let me know what I can improve on. And regardless, let me know what some of your favorite watercolor brands are in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much to my patrons for helping keep this channel afloat, and I will see you all in the next video. Until next time, happy painting.